Good afternoon. My name is Ottis, and today I wanted to talk to you about cybersecurity in international conflicts. Now, first, to set the scene or the scope a little bit, when I talk about cybersecurity, I am talking about it more than just a technical discipline to protect your computer, but as a contest over the desired state of digital data and cyber physical systems. And the second half of this title is international conflicts. I'm talking both armed conflicts as well as the so-called great game that happens below the threshold of armed attack, including things like sabotage, espionage, and sanctions, etc. So let's first talk about cyber war or cybersecurity in the context of armed conflicts. This is something that is generally in the shadows of kinetic and information operations. Maybe, in some cases it might be by design, but it is also natural. If you are facing a tank rolling down your street, you are going to be a bit less worried about your password security at that time. So if you have a war that has a highly visible kinetic component or a highly visible information operations component, it's quite natural that cyber operations, if they occur, are not talked about as much. And the reason for that is that if you look at offensive cyber operations, then I would argue that the perfect offensive cyber operation is the one that no one knows about, because it is then going to be more effective, more difficult to defend against future attacks like this. And it gives an advantage to the attacker. A good, let's say, an interesting example, a successful failure, if you will, is the case of Stuxnet. This was a case where a cyber weapon was used in order to achieve kinetic effects in Iran, and it was successful in doing that. However, why is it a failure? Well, it is a failure because it was actually detected outside of Iran. It was widely studied all over the world, and today I can use it as an example. So I think in the ideal setting, the people behind this case would have preferred that nobody had ever found out about this attack, and the victim will just think that they are incredibly unlucky. Their centrifuges are blowing up and there's nothing they can do about it. So this is another reason why we probably hear less about cyber operations than what would be normal if everything would be above board. Now, if we look at the Russian invasion of Ukraine, it gives us plenty of examples of how cyber has been used or is being used in the context of armed conflicts. Even before the recent hot phase, which started in February, there had been significant cyber attacks against the Ukrainian infrastructure. So power infrastructure is the most famous case in 2015. However, also during this last 8 months or so, we've seen several very interesting cyber events, such as attacking the KA-SAT ground modems on the early hours of the invasion, which resulted in thousands of ground modems being disabled, both in Ukraine and elsewhere. So there was significant collateral damage as well. And we have seen various ransomware cases right before and after the final invasion started here, and various other types of targeted cyber attacks against Ukraine. Now, on the other hand, I did decide to add a bullet here, an interesting comment from June, I believe, where U.S. Cyber Command admitted that they engage in what they call hunt forward operations in support of Ukraine. So it's not 100% clear what is meant by that. One way to approach it is to say that These are operations to hunt for Russian capabilities in Ukraine, or to help Ukrainians identify potential weaknesses, indicators of compromise, and therefore thwart any Russian cyber operations in Ukraine. So obviously, there's probably a lot more going on that is what I can present here today. I also wanted to make a point that sometimes cyberspace is affected by other domains as well. A good example of this is the Russian, let's say, as the Russians were advancing earlier this year, they also destroyed a lot of the 3G, 4G infrastructure as they went along, until they figured out that this actually causes a self-denial service for them, because their encrypted communications require this infrastructure to function. So these are examples that nicely fit into the military power paradigm, and now let's look at some others, because there are other elements of power, and they are also relevant from the cybersecurity perspective. First, we have the informational psychological. Espionage has long been a favorite pastime between states, and cyber has made it more effective. So, if you want to know about what your adversary is up to or what their capabilities are, cyber is probably one way to achieve this awareness. If you want to boost your economy without spending too much time on research and development, economic espionage, again, something that very easily works with the cyber offensive paradigm. Another thing that we see on this softer side is the information or influence operations. If you think back to the 2016 elections in US, then you will remember that there was a lot of discussion about email, which is not normal for a presidential election, but this arguably had an oversized effect. And the reason behind this was that somebody had stolen some emails and was now conducting a targeted release of said emails. Another aspect of information operations that is very interesting is the circumvention of censorship. So again, an example from Ukraine, where Zelensky's speech has been broadcasted in occupied territories, circumventing the Russian information blockade. Going beyond economic and political, let's say sanctions or actions, we definitely see that there is a significant effect on cyberspace from various technology sanctions. If you have no chips, you're going to build less technology, including network technology. Same is true for software and services, where you can control the capabilities that the other nation is going to have, just because they won't be able to update their systems or to even use some software. And there's also the brain drain aspect of just pure human expertise, which is now either leaving certain countries or prevented from leaving some countries. So I don't want to go too much in depth on the economic aspects here. There's probably better experts in the room for that. I'm just highlighting that for cybersecurity people, the economic and political sanctions have played an oversized role in the cyber events of the Ukrainian case that we are observing this year. So let's also talk about the future a bit. And here there's, I think, some good news. There is some common ground in the world. More or less everybody agrees that critical infrastructure is important and requires protection. And more or less everybody is moving in some way or form towards digitizing their economy because they see some additional benefit from it. Now, this is a very technocentric approach, and partially because of this, I think compromise is possible because the technology answer is quite simple. You standardize, you build interoperable systems, and you enable economies of scale. However, cybersecurity and cyberspace is not just a technical endeavor. Engineers are not fully in charge of everything that's going on in there. This is where the bad news comes in. We also have conflicting views, and specifically, this is the content side. So, what content is illegal, or what activity is illegal inside cyberspace? And this is an ideological problem, and it is not connected to the internet or cyberspace or computers or programming. It is about underlying ideological differences between nations, between blocks of nations. And therefore, compromise, I think, is not very likely, and we can await more examples of technological nationalism and economic protectionism to occur. I briefly also wanted to talk about some new technologies or current technologies that are on the cusp of achieving some sort of a new level. First, artificial intelligence. There's been a lot of progress in the field of artificial intelligence lately, but I would say that almost all of it has been in the field called narrow AI. Narrow AI is a field of artificial intelligence that focuses on one specific aspect. So whether this is speech recognition or image recognition or how to play chess, these are aspects where AI has made a lot of progress. So, for example, the computer can now consistently beat a human in various games. And we are seeing a lot of good progress in things like natural language processing. However, general AI, such as an intelligence that would be self-aware and able to solve problems that are not predefined from any walk of life. This is not something that we have seen yet. However, if it ever would get to that phase, we would definitely have a very, very significant event happening across the human civilization and cybersecurity in particular, because that would probably mean that we can take the human out of the loop, both on the defensive and offensive side, just because the human is going to be too slow in order to meaningfully act or react in the future cyber conflicts. Next, I want to talk about quantum computing a bit. So quantum computing is, again, developing. There are some things we know about it. So some cryptographical algorithms that will be broken once quantum computers reach a certain capability. But since it is a known threat in that sense, we might actually expect more of a case where the technology matures but does not cause a significant problem, because we have foreseen and taken steps to mitigate the potential effects. Human-machine interfaces. So adding new capabilities to the human. This would be something that revolutionizes cybersecurity as well, because we now will have to talk about how to protect a human from being hacked. So these are additional sensors that we might include, first for medical reasons, later for perhaps convenience or entertainment, and additional capabilities that perhaps are not even on the discussion board yet. Same goes for robotics. As they get more autonomous, more smart, smaller, we can expect a lot of new security problems to emerge from that. And finally, I'd like to end this discussion with a provocation for a discussion in the panel. So humanity rules the world, arguably thanks to our intelligence alone. We're not the strongest, fastest, hardiest, or even the most adaptable or numerous. So all we have really is our intelligence. And now if you think back to the AI discussion, what will be the role of a modern state in a world where humans are the second most intelligent entity? With that thought, I thank you for your attention, and I wish you a good remainder of the conference.